Hello everyone and welcome to webinar number 3. I'm your host Catherine Newington and this is the ICT Educators Virtual Development Series. Today we're going to be talking about utilising technology for remote learning, and I've got two special guests with me today. I've got Tammie Ward-Hawkins, who is a very passionate STEM teacher in Queensland, and Professor Andrew Fluck from the University of Tasmania, who's also with us today as well. As always, it is going to be a jam-packed session. So we are going to start our conversation today around evaluating technology and looking at our learner and what they might need to have when they're utilising technology. Then we're going to be talking about how you might go about finding the right tool for the right job, and that's where Tammie's going to come in, and she's going to share her journey that she's had when they've tried to find the right platform to use for their students. Then we're going to pass it on to Andrew, who is going to give us an insight into how he has been evaluating learning when his students are using online platforms. Then we're going to be talking about social media and looking at some considerations but also benefits of how you can use social media to help you professionally. So starting off as always, I'd highly recommend that you join the ICT Educators platform that we have here at ACS. All of the details from today's webinar, including the slides, all of the resources that we have within the resource link, will all be found within our community of practice. It'll also give you a chance to talk and communicate with me further if you have any more questions or your questions weren't answered today. So starting off, when we are looking at how we evaluate technology, we've always got to remember that technology is just a tool, and there is no one magic bullet when it comes to technology. One size does necessarily not fit all. And so we need to always remember that if we start relying on one type of technology, what we don't want to happen is to create this cookie-cutter style of education where we start to just replicate it for student to student and education institution to education institution. If we start doing that, we're not going to be giving our students the learning experience that they deserve individually. So when we are evaluating technology, we want to start to also think about our learner and who our learner is today. So we're going to then think about how digital technology has changed the landscape for our learners, and also thinking about then how digital technology and all the different styles of mode of technology has impacted how our learners learn today. Think about the different styles and modes that they use. They could learn through podcasts, through videos, through websites as well. Gone are the days when we're just using plain textbooks as well. Certainly changed since I've been at school. Then because of that, what we also need to think about is the type of skills that we want our learners to have for today and also in their future. What we don't want to be doing is reflecting on the skills that we had when we were at school. So then how can we utilise technology for our students for today's classroom? And one of those things that we also really want to think about is the type of thinking that we want our students to be involved in as well. Moving away from that drill and skill and moving into more of evaluating and creating. That's how we want to utilise technology for their learning purposes. Last week, in webinar number 2, I looked at pedagogy and how pedagogy impacts the role of technology. We unpacked Bloom's taxonomy and Solow taxonomy as well. And after we've spoken about and looked at pedagogy, we're now going to look at different ways and methods that you can use to evaluate that learning and the technology to ensure that you're picking the right technology for the right tool. We've spoken about our learners and their needs. But when it comes to technology, what type of things are we actually looking for? So when I think about the types of concepts that I want to have within technology, I think about these 5 things. These are almost on my must-have list. And these stem from Michael Fullan's 6Cs. So he does a lot of things around deep learning. So one thing for me that I'm always looking for is the flexibility to be able to use that technology across multiple platforms. What I don't want to start doing is using technology and siloing it for each subject, that we just use a particular piece of technology when it's maths related, when it's science, when it's English. We want to be able to use technology in a way that it helps them in all of those in all of those subjects as well. If we do end up soloing it like that, most likely we're going to be using a drill and skill, which then brings me to the types of technology I want our students to be able to participate with and involved in, is that I want them to be able to show their own creativity and really influence their critical thinking as well. I want my students to be able to work together. So even though they might be working on one device, I want them to be able to collaborate with everyone in the classroom. And most importantly, I want them to be able to gain the knowledge to think outside of the box as well and think about how learning is impacting any global issues and current issues that we might be having as well. When thinking all about this as well, I saw this really valuable tweet from Neil Selwyn, one of my favourite followers on Twitter. And this was a tweet, and I really like this because he comes from an education standpoint. And you can see there that there's 3 really vital questions that when you do come across a new technology, ask yourself some of these 3 questions. What models of pedagogy does it promote? What assumptions are they making about the learner? And what are its core values? Thinking that, again, a lot of tech companies, are they actually aware of today's classroom and today's learners? Or are they creating that technology based on their experience years ago? And I've put together a list of questions that can help you create a discussion with your staff at school. And they all belong within these 5 areas. So last week I said that we looked a bit around pedagogy. And so one of the questions that I've got for you is, does the content accommodate for individual differences? Differentiation is huge in our classrooms. And what we don't want to do is implement technology, but every single student doing the exact same work. Can that technology differentiate and suit our different learners within the classroom? And also, again, the curriculum. Can the technology used with it, can the technology be used in other subject areas? So as again, it might be something that you can put across other areas. If it's a piece of technology that can't, it's not the end of the world, but I want you to factor in that and have that as part of the discussion. It might be a limitation for you. However, in the other areas, there may be more benefits to you. The assessment and feedback. What happens when a learner gets something incorrect? What type of feedback are we providing to our learners through that platform? Every time I've tested and trialed different technologies, that's one of the first things I do, especially when it's a multiple choice. I don't care whether the students get the right answer. I want to see what happens and how my students are supported when they get the wrong answer. Is it a case of it's wrong and they just keep pressing the right one until they've got it and move on? What does that actually help them with their learning? And have they learnt that the right answer? Or have they just made the guess until that answer has popped up? Also, the interface and design. This was a lot of information that I unpacked when we were talking about creating videos for content learning. The same thing applies for this one now as well. Check out and look at the type of content such as music and animation, and can that be controlled by the learner? I know sometimes when I've used technology and they have music, that in times that music and that animation can actually hinder learning. So can that be controlled by the user? There were instances when I used different types of technology, and unfortunately I couldn't change the music. But what I did do is when I did use that in the classroom, I made sure that the students were using that on mute, or the volume of it was at a lower level. And again, the usability as well. How easy is it for our students to manage the technology on their own? The last thing that we want to be able to do is have to support them the whole entire way. And can students use the program independently after one use? That's really valuable. So all of these questions will be really beneficial for you if you are starting to use technology or you want to start to have a professional dialogue between other teachers. What those questions will be able to do is almost validate your reasons, and you're looking at multiple areas of if that technology is the right tool for your students. Other considerations as well that I want you to be able to do, and I kind of call this the pick and mix one. And I always imagine a box of favourites. And if I had a box of favourites in front of me right now, I'm sure that you would be able to pick your favourite one and then your second favourite and your third favourite. And then most likely or not, those Turkish delights will all be at the end. Except for me, I love Turkish delight. So the same kind of thing applies when we're choosing technology. What I want you to be able to do is use that same analogy to be able to pick and choose the right technology for the right tool at the right time for the right students as well. Something else to be really mindful of, especially now when it comes to using a lot of digital technologies, is what the company considers a free trial. Considerations of look at the type of commitment that you might have to abide by after you sign up for this one. I know a lot of the times it says it's a monthly cost, but a lot of the times it's actually an upfront cost for that 12 months as well. Is that something that suits you, or were you only looking for 1 month to use this as well? Something else that I was thinking about recently is that a lot of companies are providing those free trials, and we are testing and using different types of technology because we can at the moment. But the question that I want you to answer and really consider is what happens after that free trial expires? Where does the student's work go? If you've been relying on a new platform that is most likely going to turn into a paid one, what happens when that trial finishes? Because one thing that I would absolutely hate to happen is that you've been using a brand new platform, you've been able to access it from home, but then that trial finishes. Where does all their work go? We don't want to get back into the classroom and have to reassess the learning that they already did at home. And if you can before the trial, is there ways for you to take photographs or evidence so it's not lost as well? Access to security as well. When you are using the new technologies at home, consider what your networks at school is going to do and if that is blocked. I've seen teachers that are using TikTok and that type of platform to be able to connect with their students because that's a platform they're aware of. When we go back into the classroom, I'm pretty sure that TikTok is going to be one that will be banned from it as well. Something as simple that happened to me is I was using a lot of ABC Splash at home and finding all of this great material for my students. However, once I got into the classroom, I actually found that ABC Splash was actually blocked by the department. So it wasn't just at a school level, it was actually a little bit bigger. So we had to go through the whole cycle of, is this particular platform that we want to use valuable enough to go through that process to unblock it? We were really lucky enough that we were able to unblock it and the students then were able to use it. But just be mindful that when you are testing something at home and you have evaluated it and it is looking good, double check it when you are in the school grounds and working within the school security network. The next one that I always, and a lot of teachers don't consider this as something that's important, but it's skill development. Actually dedicating some time for you to get to know the product and also getting your students to understand how it works as well. Something that we always kind of just go over and just make the assumption that our students will be able to pick it up. One thing as well that I want you to be able to differentiate between is the difference between what you and the skill development you as an educator has to go through versus the skill development that a student would go through. When you're going through it as an educator, don't feel obliged that you have to know the ins and outs of every single part of that technology. If you have a broad understanding of how it works, can validate its reasoning to use it in the classroom, that's actually enough for you to understand and also understand what that end product is going to look like from our students. From a student perspective, it doesn't really matter how our students get there, what colour font they use, if they use a border or not. It's really then for them, it's about that end product. So they'll probably dive into that technology a little bit more than you, but that's okay. Again, if you have a broad understanding of it, you're doing pretty well. I always gave, whenever I was giving new technology to my students, I always gave them a 10-minute trial and error, have a bit of a play session. And all I would say to them is, here's some new, go off and play for 10 minutes. And I didn't even try and give them any instructions on how anything worked. What I wanted them to do was work together and figure out those little bits and pieces and those technical skills themselves. And it was, and I made sure that it also was 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, and it was timed as well, is that I would get them to share some of the functions and the technicalities that they found out about it. We would share on the proviso that we shared nothing else that was new. It meant that the next 10 minutes that we used, they used that to share and learn more skills off each other. So I was then able to back away from being the holder of all the knowledge on the skill development, and they were then able to feed and learn off each other. And it was a really great technique and very, very valuable within about 15 or 20 minutes. Now I'm going to pass it over to Tammie, and she's going to talk to you about how she evaluated different types of technology to find the right platform for when her students were working remotely. Thanks, Tammie.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. At our school, we went through our online learning. So for us, we looked at the different ways when we went through for COVID-19. Prior to COVID-19, for myself as a STEM teacher and also experienced one-to-one laptop and online learning teacher, I traditionally would use Blackboard, and then later on as it evolved to become iConnect. The problems with iConnect, as we all know, and Blackboard, is that it was very heavy in bandwidth. So we were fortunate enough at my school to have a trial with a system called IC. Now, one of the good things about IC is it's very student-friendly because it has that gamification feel about it. So the students come in and they use the same keyboard configuration as a lot of the PC games are. So to move, you use your WASD, which was really good, and they have avatars, and their avatars are them. It's a little, as you can see on the screen, it's their avatars are a picture of themselves, and they move around the screen using either a mouse, a gamepad, and as I said, the keys. And the other good thing with them is it's low bandwidth. So for using it at home, for those areas in Australia or in Queensland where the internet's not quite so great, it meant that they could still keep their video on and they could still see each other and they could face one another and see each other. So, and have that interaction as if they were together in the same place. The other thing too is that the teacher screens within IC, they didn't have to walk all the way up to the screen. They could double click on the screen and the screen became what was on their own computer screen, so it's all up close and personal. Those screens also were interactive. So you could put up a screen as a teacher and have the kids interact on that screen and have it already set up with activities for them to do before you got there. So the kids could be in there, they weren't locked out. You could have it timed if you wanted to, that they couldn't get in there before 9 o'clock. And if you wanted them in there, open the room at 5 to 9, and they could go in and you could have little activities on screens that they could do while you wait, or a stimulus that was related to the activity. The room also is very flexible. You can actually add tables and chairs and windows, and you could actually decorate it with plants and all sorts of things. You could be really, really creative in there. You could have it as a coffee table, a coffee room, or any. And my next slide, you can see the different configurations in the rooms as well. You could also set it up so that the students had something to do before you got there, and you could be just there to monitor what the kids were doing and have several different activities for the kids to do while you're there. You could share your screen, share videos with them, and actually do a proper teacher at the front, students at the back. You could make them all sit. There's actually a button that goes, all sit, and everybody sits, and they can't move. They have hands up. There's a megaphone that goes through all of the computers, regardless of whether they're at home or here at school. Very interactive. Everybody can talk, or you can only have one person talk at a time. The kids really loved it when they're interacting in there because it had that game feel for them. As you can see in this screen, there's the different configurations of different rooms, but you could also design your own room. So you can actually go into Room Designer and you can have it any shape you like. You can have a cathedral, you can have it in any shape you like. The room on the left-hand side where all the different types of rooms off, you could actually, in there were different whiteboards all around, and you could have a different activity, and you could break your class up and tell each student what board they need to be on. And you could stop them from writing on a board that wasn't theirs, so that you end up with that collaboration. And you can put a table down and name the table, and they could only go to that table and work with that group of kids. And that was quite unique for those sorts of things. So as far as IC is concerned, the kids really, really did enjoy it, and they got a lot out of it, and it being very, very interactive in that respect. More than one teacher could be in there, so you could have 2 or 3 teachers in the same room, in the same space. It would hold 52 kids if you wanted to in there, if you wanted that many students. It's also for conferences and things like that too, where you can actually see each other. When you go in, some of the kids really thought it was cool, and they wouldn't go in as their name because they'd log in with their email, and then underneath it.
All right, so we've just had a look at how we can actually evaluate technology. Andrew is going to pass it on now, and he's going to be talking about how he assesses his student learning when they're using an online platform to learn. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, on the screen now you should see a question. The question I've got for all of you that are listening is, do your students ever say that you're a mean teacher? They do to me sometimes, and they're university students. What I've done is I've combined assessment for learning with our online learning platform, and I've made it so they can't actually access the next week's learning material until they get 80% on a 5-question quiz. They're allowed 3 attempts at each quiz, but then they have to contact a human tutor to get feedback and help. This diagnostic approach helps them confirm and consolidate their learning. It also allows them to progress at their own rate. So some of them are very happy to do 5 weeks work in 1 week, or some people leave it to the last moment. We've all got students like that. The way I ask the questions is I seek higher order learning, and I look to see if there's been a mislearning where a wrong idea has been adopted. When they look at the questions, students complain that all the responses are true. But I say to them, they've got to learn to choose the best answer. For instance, in this question about Goldilocks, what's the thing that we're trying to teach? The children's story of Goldilocks, the intended learning is to understand about respect for private property. Goldilocks naively invades the home of others and uses their private property as if it were their own. The story presents the victims of her disrespect as bears that can be very violent if provoked. There is a learning. The Goldilocks rule states that the humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy. So let me show you the answers that the students might be choosing from. So she's apologised, she's been adopted into the family, she's offered a handkerchief to borrow. Which one did she choose? The largest one, as big as a table, the medium-sized one, the size of her face, the smallest one, smaller than her thumb, the one that matched her hair, or did she just keep it? So we might look at the different kinds of answers here. For instance, the one that matched her hair is this teaching all our students that blondes can get away with doing things wrong. Or if she chooses to keep it, is that getting us to understand that they've learnt that they shouldn't abuse the property of others? We might want to think about the medium path, the one that's not too hot, not too cold, which is the Goldilocks rule for extrasolar planets. So by doing this, we could see where there's been a mislearning. We could see whether they've understood what we intended to teach. There are tools to do this, and I just want to draw your attention to two, taking into account what Catherine has told us. Free tools are good. Both of these are free. QuizStar is an online one based in the USA, but you can set up a teacher account and you can set up that kind of quiz for your students. If you're not aware of it, here in Australia we have Improve, which allows you to set up a quiz with your own questions or using calibrated items from the tests which the students do.
Yeah.
Okay, so diagnosis from learning objects in Scootle for further study. Now, Catherine, did you want me to go on to talk about social media? I'll put slide 19 up, which indicates that we're going to do some social media now. So just a couple of rules about social media. First of all, the first rule is to make sure that if you're going to use social media, that you should use a separate teacher page for your teacher presence. I got this when I was talking to a school and they asked me to help them with the problem they had with one student. That student had what they called Facebook addiction. How on earth could they cope with Facebook addiction? Well, their solution to the problem was to put the learning challenges in front of that student by posting them on her Facebook page. So that worked well. This is advice from Professor Stephen Heppel. He's the one that suggested that you make sure that you keep your professional identity very different from your personal identity. The other thing that it may be worth passing on is that when you get a presentation from the Commissioner for eSafety, they point out that the most frequent reason for new teachers to lose their jobs is because they have inappropriate connections with students through social media. And that's very easy to happen. If you're a young teacher, you're just out of university, it's quite likely that you've got younger siblings who are still at school. You may be connected to them through Facebook by a family relationship, and hence from them to their friends who are still school students. So establishing a new separate professional identity is really, really important. I'll see if I can hand back now to Tammie, because Tammie, you got cut off halfway through. Let's see if you can finish what you were saying about IC and how you use it in schools, please.
Tammie, can you hear us? Are you ready?
I think you'll have to carry on, Catherine. I don't think Tammie can hear us.
That's okay. Our technology was great sometimes, great when it works, and then when it's not, always lots of issues that we have. Okay, so continuing the conversation with social media, is that social media is also a really great way to connect with other teachers. So it might be able to then, once you connect with other teachers, you're able to broaden the conversation that you will have with other teachers other than just the small network that you have. I know that using social media for connecting with other teachers, I've really been able to broaden the discussions that I've had and really been able to look at what other teachers have been using and the types of resources and the suggestions and examples that they've used as well. One of the things that I've absolutely loved about it is finding like-minded teachers, whether that's a subject-based or also just other teachers that are passionate about a particular area, just like digital technologies and the digital technologies curriculum. It certainly gives me a little bit of a warm fuzzy on the inside when I connect with other teachers. So one of the things and two ways that I use social media to connect with other teachers is through Facebook groups. And also then Twitter chats. So when I'm looking at Facebook groups, two of the ones that I kind of use on a regular basis is Teachers of the Digital Technologies Curriculum, Australian Curriculum. That's an open group, and there's always lots of information of different types of resources and things that are happening around digital technologies. So even also, if you are in a different state that doesn't use the digital technologies curriculum for the Australian curriculum, don't worry, because there's not a lot of talk around the actual content of the curriculum. It's more about the different types of activities that you can do in your classroom. And this ranges from all the way from foundation and then also back to even high school and beyond. And there's even a few times where teachers have connected with each other who might be high school teachers in the same boat. Another one that's a new one is the Victorian Teachers Going Online, and that Facebook group was created to support teachers when they were learning remotely in Victoria. Lots of supportive comments about how teachers are going about solving different issues that they're having as well. Twitter chats for me are the ones that my two that are my go-to is Aussie Ed Chat and also the STEM primary chat as well. With the Aussie Ed Chat, that's on a Sunday, and that really talks quite a broad understanding and broad information around education. Primary STEM chat is obviously focused for primary school teachers who are looking around in that STEM Pacific area as well. And I think that we've got Tammie back on now. So we're going to switch all the way back to her presentation and we can continue on with her. So I'll pop you all the way back again, Tammie. And I think we were back together.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Technology is great when it works. So as I was saying, the next thing that we used after we looked at IC was we also then had a look at Teams. Microsoft Teams is really, really versatile. So as a specialist team, which I am part of in my school, we decided that we'd have a go and look at Teams. Teams I came across with the University of Tasmania when I was looking at my suite there and thought, oh, this looks good. Let's have a look at this, and then introduced that also into the school that I'm in. And one of the good things about Teams is it keeps a really good record of any chat that you might have within your specialist team as teachers, and it creates channels that you can be part of where you can keep files and everybody is part of a particular channel. And we actually have here in Queensland the ability to have students as part of our channels. And so we now have classroom channels for each class, and each teacher and specialist teacher is part of that channel as well. So we can talk to students at home. They can record their voice, and they can also chat with us as well through posts in there. We can also put our files into the teams and allow them to share their work with us. There's an ability to also put assessment work in there and testing and things like that for them to do that. The other good thing too is that you can put the posts in there, and it doesn't get lost like it does in email. It's nice and succinct, and it keeps it all nice and neat as well. If you have a look at my next slide, you can see how we set up our channel for our school and our specialist channel, and you'll see on the left-hand side where we started to set up like our staff meetings and things like that. And in these channels, we do live meetings. So on the screen, there was 4 of us teachers, but there was also students from at home that were with us in the classroom while we were teaching. So we had maybe 5 or 10 students in the classroom, and sometimes we would have 9 or 10 students on the screen as well, and they could see us teaching, but they could also see the students behind us that were also in the classroom as well, learning as we're teaching our specialisation area as well. So that was really, really great for them to be able to see their friends at school and to be able to access those things. So in the early days when we were first doing Teams, the students didn't have access to the files and things. As you can see in this next slide, this is how we set up all of our slides and where we put our files. So now the students can access anything, any of the files, any of the work. They can put their work back there. We can access that. We can mark it. We can put it back there, or we can email it to them. The other thing too is the meetings and things, you can schedule them through posts, and you can schedule them through Outlook. So if you wanted to have a meeting with the class, you go to the Outlook, go to their calendar, and you want to schedule a meeting or a class with the kids, and you schedule it, add all of their names to it, and they get an email, and all they have to do is click join in the email, and then they join the class via video. And all of the things that they need are already there. You can share your screen, you can share the files. You can also put closed captions on as well. So for those kids who are